Hi everyone, my name is Greg and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Steno. Earlier today we recorded a live webinar at the request of people and many of our clients that had questions about how to prepare for and how to take a remote deposition. What follows is that webinar, but in the interest of time and in the interest of making the first part of the webinar a little bit more precise, I've re-recorded the opening here just to get you guys the information as quickly and accurately as possible. As part of the opening, I discussed three topics that we would be talking through as part of our agenda today. The first topic was talking through why fully remote depots are different than what you may be used to. The second topic, which is where the video picks up, is talking through how you as a trial attorney still continue to make sure that these depots happen and are able to move forward. And the third is a mock deposition, which again is also on the webinar, that covers what would actually happen if you were to both participate and facilitate a remote deposition. At the tail end of the webinar we had a Q&A, and we hope that you find all of this content and material useful. As the opening, I mentioned one of the three topics. The first one, which was how fully remote depots are different, I want to talk to you a little bit here. And as it relates to fully remote depots, what you may be used to and your mental construct might be what you've seen for traditional remote depots, where you as the taking attorney or maybe the defending attorney is in a different location. But if it's one person in a different location and everyone else co-located, like the court reporter, the defending attorney, and the witness all in one place, we as the court reporting agency have far more control over how the deposition takes place. Specifically, we're able to send a videographer or somebody technical to the location where everyone is co-located, and they are able to set up a laptop and a screen to help facilitate the deposition itself. Separately, those exhibits that you guys are used to sharing would also get shared in traditionally a paper format in the same manner that you're used to today. Again, where this is different when we talk about the depots, when we're doing a fully remote depot, is that everyone is in a different location, likely in their office or in the comfort of their home. And that means that it's no longer possible for us to use paper exhibits, and it's no longer possible for us to send somebody that's technically proficient to make sure that all the information is delivered and consumed by all the people that are on location without those folks having to do anything to make it happen. Given that, what we talked through in the webinar today and what you will see in the mock depot is how we handle everyone being fully remote. What we do for that situation is that we use what we call depots from a distance. All of that's powered by Zoom, which is the leading video conferencing software that's out there on the market today. And one of the things that we do as well is we make sure that we're able to train both the taking attorney as well as all parties that are attending the depot ahead of time about how this is supposed to work. Because one of the main things that's different is you on your computers right now, you have a landscape version of anything that you might read on your screen. So if you were to pull up a document, you're going to see a landscape version of that document. By comparison, if I have a witness that's joining via their mobile device, and as I show you my mobile device here, if I show a landscape version on my mobile device, it's only going to be that big on my screen. And if it's that big on my screen, it becomes incredibly difficult. The person on the other end has to pinch and zoom. If you, as the taking attorney, are sharing an exhibit from your laptop, and the consumption of that exhibit can become particularly difficult. One of the things that we've innovated on, and we'll talk about as we go through the mock depot, is how we share exhibits. We do that through the chat feature within Zoom, and we also host those exhibits in a secure cloud-based storage. By putting all of that together, we're able to make it really easy for witnesses, defending attorneys, and otherwise to view those exhibits on their native device and take advantage of those exhibits so that they can view them in, take advantage of the native user interface of the phone and view them in a way and in a manner that you are accustomed to doing in your everyday life. I had a great co-founder of mine in a previous business. And he would often say, and this is our goal really in what you guys are about to see, is that great technology should really emulate what happens in real life. And the way that we've gone about setting this up is just as easy as using a FaceTime conference and that you might use on your phone, and it's just as easy as if you were in person. So that's our goal today. Again, what follows are the second and third topics. We hope you enjoy the rest of the webinar, and we look forward to working with you soon. Thank you. Let's migrate over to this part, Dylan, with you walking through your opinion and kind of your thoughts about how you're going about taking remote depots and how you are ensuring that these still continue to move forward.
Sure. So we begin with just a recognition that remote depots are specifically provided for under both the California Rules of Court and CCP. I'll just briefly share on my screen here the relevant CRC statute. This is 3.1010. Section A says that any party may take an oral deposition by telephone, video conference, or other remote electronic means, provided each of these three things happens. But what you'll see here is a distinction between a party opponent and a non-party opponent. The distinction is that for a party deponent, it says a party deponent must appear at his or her deposition in person and be in the presence of the deposition officer. Now, that language could be interpreted narrowly to mean that the deposition must take place in a conference room where both the court reporter and party are physically present, or it could be interpreted more broadly. It really depends on what the term the deposition is, at his or her deposition. If the deposition is considered to be a Zoom remote deposition, then of course the party will be there in the presence of our court reporter, just like I'm physically here in the presence of the court reporter. Nevertheless, there is some ambiguity there. And that is being, I understand from Bob Simon that he's working on some legislation to clarify that ambiguity. But it's our position that remote depots are provided for expressly, at least as to everybody except for the parties in the case. And we've had some defense lawyers trying to cancel depositions or put off depositions. And our general response to that is that unless and until something changes, the case itself has not been stayed by any court, which means that the discovery deadlines still stand and the parties' obligations to participate in discovery still stands. So the parties still have to respond to written discovery and they still need to participate in depositions. And this is the way through remote depositions that we're prepared to take depositions going forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Dylan. And again, I imagine there may be more questions relating to this and the tail end of it. We will cover this again during the Q&A. The last part that we're going to cover today, before we get into that, is a mock sample remote deposition. What we want you guys to see is how easy this is to do and how it all works. Before we jump into that, I want to cover a few things that we do at Steno to really make sure that this process goes off without a hitch. First, and I mentioned this earlier, we have depots at a distance. That's all backed by the power of Zoom. If you go to steno.zoom.us, and Dan or Dylan, if you guys could put that in the chat thread, we actually have a number of help videos there that show a mock deposition. We have some resources and materials there, and it makes it really easy for people to learn about how all these pieces work together. There's also frequently asked questions where we have content that's specifically facing and friendly for attorneys at the bottom of the page. We encourage you guys to see that as well. Prior to us setting up one of these remote depositions for our clients, we generally will do a number of things. First and foremost, and this is where I think there are some elements here that we really stand out with. We reach out to our taking attorney. We make sure that we understand all the parties that are supposed to attend, and then we send all those parties an invite to the deposition itself. It's a calendar invite just like you might normally see, but it has all of the instructions for how to join via video and how to join via audio. On top of that, one of the ways that we really aim to make this easier is that we will run through a dry run of what you might ordinarily see when taking one of these depositions in Zoom. So you get a chance to press the buttons, make sure that your audio works, make sure that your camera works, And we on the other side, as Steno employees, will make sure that everything is working seamlessly before the day prior to the remote deposition itself. We don't always have to do that if we've done it with you before, but we highly recommend it if it's your first time doing it. We also offer that as a courtesy, not only to our court reporters, but to defense counsel, or sorry, excuse me, the defending attorney, as well as to any witnesses. We want to make sure that their technology is up and running and so forth ahead of time, so that way people aren't spending a number of minutes when we take the deposition to sort that out. Last but not least, and you guys will see this because we're going to do it in the mock depo, on the day of the deposition, a Steno employee joins remote depositions 30 minutes prior to the scheduled start time. We join the deposition, we make sure that they run smoothly, we troubleshoot any issues the day of the deposition, and most importantly, we moderate the deposition to tell everyone what to expect. Again, these fully remote depositions are a bit new to some people, and the byproduct of that is we really need to make sure that we're doing as much as possible to educate people about how this all works, and quite frankly, again, just how easy it is. We often, again, compare it to just like taking a FaceTime call. Before we jump into this, I am going to scroll down to my screen. There's a set of instructions that I have that we give to our team to run these remote depositions as moderators. And I am going to kick that off as if we were doing just that. I think there was a chat in here that you were asking about videographers. We will cover that at the end of this, and I'll circle back to kind of some of the best practices on that. So really quick, let's say this was actually a deposition. Again, just to recap, Dylan, if you could raise your hand, he's going to be our litigator, our taking attorney. Dan, if you could raise your hand, he's going to be our defending attorney. Maggie, if you could raise your hand, she's going to be our witness. And Janice, if you could raise your hand, she's going to be our court reporter. Normally people would filter onto this call in the minutes leading up to the, let's call it a 10 o'clock start time. So between 9:30 and 10 o'clock, people would have been filtering in. I, as the moderator, would greet everyone just like we were in person. As people would hop on and say, hey, Dylan, great to meet you. I'm Greg. I'm the moderator from Steno. It looks like Dan and Maggie and Janice are already on the call. I would generally go through a raising of hands just like we did to introduce everyone. Again, just trying to emulate what would happen if we were all in person. At that point that I know that everyone seems like their audio and their connections are working, I would kick it off and I would say the following. My name is Greg and I'm the meeting moderator from Steno. I work at the court reporting agency that was hired by Stalwart Law Group to facilitate this deposition today. My job here today is to make sure that everyone on the call is set up properly prior to this deposition starting so there aren't any issues. If we do everything right during this phase, then the deposition should mirror what happens when all parties are in fact in the same room together. I'm going to walk everyone through our quick checklist that won't take more than a few minutes, that will make sure everything goes super smoothly. And to make this go, we're going to cover two things. First, I'm going to give some general recommendations. And second, we are going to cover the basics of a Zoom meeting so that way everyone can have a good experience. This will all happen off the record. And once you guys are set up and going, I will leave the call. But I will leave contact information in the chat thread in case any issues come up. And our team at Steno, we're available around the clock to help anyone in case, for whatever reason, if somebody has a call drop or otherwise, or their internet connection breaks in the middle of the call, we're here to help and handle that. Okay, so first, some general recommendations. To help the court reporter get a clear and accurate record, we ask that everyone speak loud enough into your microphones so that way it can pick up the audio. We also encourage everyone to turn on their video and put your face in view of the camera, as it makes it far easier for the reporter to understand exactly who is talking at any given time. If your video isn't on yet, we will walk through how to do that in a second. Voices can oftentimes sound the same, and it makes it much easier to tell who is talking or making objections when there are mouth movements that match the voice. Because this is a video call and that is dependent on audio, there may be cases when the reporter asks for further clarification more often than normal. The reporter may also ask to break if they're having a hard time hearing anyone on the call. And we'll take everyone off the record to encourage that we fix the audio problem before we continue. If you know in advance that your internet connection is not ideal, we encourage you to join via your phone right now instead. Phone connections tend to be more stable in cases where your internet connection isn't working. To check your internet speed, you can go to speedtest.net on any internet browser on whatever device you are joining from. If your upload or your download speed are less than 1.5 megabits per second, then we recommend you calling in at one of the phone numbers that were on the meeting invite. Again, if anyone has any issues with the audio at any point, just reach out to us and we'll get it fixed. Okay, so second, I'm gonna make sure that I screen share some of the screenshots so that way everyone on this call can see what it would look like to join via Zoom. One call out here, for those of you guys that are joined as attendees on the webinar, the functionality that you get for a Zoom webinar is different than the functionality you get from a traditional Zoom meeting. You don't have the ability to share anything on your screen, and you can't turn your camera or your microphone on or off. What I'm about to show you though is just that, is what people would see if they were joining in person, as well as the instructions that I would give to those people to make sure that they're able to join properly. Give me one moment here, I'm gonna share my screen. You guys can see, you should be able to see on my screen a purple screenshot that says how to use Zoom. Can everyone see that? Cool. So it says how to use Zoom here. One of the first things, again, that we encourage you to do is to turn on your camera. If you're on a laptop, on the lower left there, there's an icon that says start video. If you have a camera on the right, if you're on a mobile device, at the bottom of the panel, there's again an icon that says start video. Once you start your video, it should look like this. You should see everyone's smiling face and so forth. The next thing that we recommend people doing is turning on gallery view. Again, that'll make it look much more like the Brady Bunch and a mosaic of tiles, so you can see everyone talking at the same time. If you're on a mobile device, if you swipe over to the left, you will get the following view. And again, this is the mosaic layout. It's much easier to use. You guys should actually be seeing the mosaic layout as an attendee right now. It's just that the default on most Zoom conferences is the speaker view, which is one person speaking at a time. Again, we generally walk people through the differences of this because it makes it feel much more like you're in person. The other part of the functionality that we're going to be using with Zoom today is the chat feature. If you're on a desktop on the left, you can click chat at the bottom there. If you're on a mobile phone, you can click on the more icon and then click on the word chat. Once you do that, you should see the chat icon pop up on the right side of your desktop or laptop. And if you're on a mobile device, it will do a full screen takeover that you can hit close on once you're done chatting everyone. Separately, if you're on a mobile device and somebody sends a chat in, it will actually bring up a notification on the phone, so you can you're one tap away. Great. So before we get started with the actual deposition, we generally do one more test with the taking attorney. We would have done this traditionally the night prior with Dylan, but in this case, we'll do it also during the deposition just to make sure his technology is working right. Dylan, can you share the test exhibit we sent you in email along with all the prepared exhibits we had sent over to you? And separately, as an aside, we wouldn't normally do this, but for the purpose of this webinar, we generally send the taking attorney a list of all the exhibits ahead of time. So if you email us at Steno, any of the exhibits that you have, we will take those, we will turn them into hyperlinks for you, so that way you can share them in the chat feature. Part of the reason why we use the chat feature to share exhibits, I mentioned this earlier, if somebody's opening an exhibit on their mobile phone, it allows them to use the native user interface of their phone to navigate the exhibit themselves, just the same way as they could if you handed a paper exhibit across the table to them. They can pick and choose where to go within the exhibit on their own, rather than you as the attorney having to share your screen and dictate to them step by step what they're able to do. But with that in mind, Dylan, if you could share the test exhibit, which I see you have shared on the screen, and walk through sending that in the chat thread as well to everyone that's on the call.
Yep, it's so ahead of time, Greg from Steno sent me an email, which I'll share with everybody here. The email contains links to this test exhibit, as well as each of the exhibits that I may intend to use during the course of the deposition. So this gets shared with only me, and then from here, I'll be able to choose which of these exhibits and what order I want to use them in the deposition. So to use a exhibit, I just hover over the link and right-click it, and then click copy link address, and then go ahead and paste that in the chat feature, which I just did, so all of you guys can see it. And now everybody on this call or on this webinar can access that exhibit from where they are, and the deponent also will be able to see the exhibit.
Great. Dylan, it looks like you have the chat stuff and the exhibits all set to go. Again, one other aside before we actually jump into the mock depo here. When we take all those exhibits at Steno and ingest them, we actually upload them to a secure storage site in the cloud. It is a folder that is then shared with the court reporter, excuse me, as well as the taking attorney following the depo. We lock it down following the depo just to make sure that no one else can change the exhibits or otherwise. And this chat thread that's over on the right here, we're able to take that chat thread. We record all of these calls by default. And not only the video, but the chat thread gets recorded. We take that chat thread, we send it to the court reporter, and we confirm that they know the exhibits in the same way that we do. And we're able to take that shared folder, leverage that shared folder for production and anything else that needs to happen as part of the creation of the actual transcript itself. We found it to be the best way, and it's easy enough for everyone to use to make the experience consistent. The last thing that I'll do here, again, I mentioned this, I'm going to send this to, let's see, all attendees. I got to figure out how to do that. I'm going to send in my info here, and I'm going to send in Steno's phone number. And that's my information in here to make sure that everyone now has that. So if you guys haven't run into any issues during this call before I hand this over to you guys, you can reach out to me at any time. Abraham Sandoval, you just reached out and asked, is there any way to mark the exhibits? You'll notice that Dylan said that right there. He said test exhibit and then listed the exhibit following it in the chat. You'll see when we go through this mock deposition, he'll be doing the same thing. He'll introduce the exhibit as exhibit 1, and then I'll paste the link just following it. Again, we get a recording of that chat thread, and that's how we're able to keep track of it all. And again, make it function just like we're there in person. All right, with that in mind, Dylan and Janice, I will hand this off to you. Ordinarily, I would leave the call at this point. I might stay on for a couple minutes just to make sure everything's running right, but a Steno moderator at that point would leave the call and would, again, leave the information available to you guys in case you run into any issues. How about it, Dylan?
Great. My name is Dylan Ruga. I'm representing the plaintiff here today. Dan Anderson is representing the defense, and Maggie Roll is the deponent. So why don't we begin? I'd ask the Madam Court Reporter to please swear in the witness.
Good afternoon. My name is Janice Johnson. I am a certified shorthand reporter. License number is 11635. Today is Thursday, March 19th. 2020, and the time is approximately 1:26 p.m. This deposition of the person most knowledgeable in the matter of Smith v. Jones is venued in the Superior Court in the County of Los Angeles, and the case number is VC 1234. At this time, I will ask all counsel to identify yourselves and whom you represent, and agree on the record that there is no objection to the deposition officer administering an oath to the witness via Zoom conferencing. Let's start with the noticing attorney.
Again, my name is Dylan Ruga for the plaintiff, and I have no objection.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dan Anderson for the witness, and I have no objection.
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. You solemnly state the testimony you will give in this deposition proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Roll.
Hello.
We'll skip all the normal admonitions that I would normally go through today, and I'm going to go ahead and show you a document that we'll mark as Exhibit 1, and I will share my screen so everybody sees how I'm doing this. I'll go back to the email that I got from Steno. I'm going to right-click it. Paste it in the chat feature, Ms. Roll. Do you see the exhibit there in the chat feature that I just shared with you?
Yes, I do.
And I'm gonna share my screen to make sure that we are looking at the same document. Is that vehicle that I'm showing on the screen the same vehicle that, excuse me, the same document that you have in front of you?
That's correct.
And for the record, what is Exhibit 1?
That is my car?
And was that the car that you were driving at the time of the accident?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and show you the next document, which we will mark as Exhibit 2. Did you receive what I just pasted as Exhibit 2?
Yes.
And so the record is clear. I will share my screen with you so that we can make sure we're looking at the same thing. Is this the document that you have in front of you? 2019 instructions for Schedule C?
Yes.
And I'd ask you to please, if you can look at the bottom of each page, they are numbered with C1 at the bottom of each page. I'd ask you to direct your attention to page C5 and let me know when you're there.
Okay.
Are you there?
I am there.
Do you see the part of yours on your screen, the same part I see on my screen where it says Part 1 Income?
Yes.
And did you review that document prior to signing your tax returns last year?
I did.
Great. I have no further questions for this witness.
Great. And that's it, guys. And this is generally what we do. So at the end of this deposition, again, we have all those exhibits. We have this chat thread. We forward it over to the court reporter. We forward the shared folder over to the court reporter. We forward it to our production team. And again, as much as possible, this should emulate what happens in real life. I don't think there's anything else that we would add for the time being. Dan, Dylan, Maggie, is there anything else that you guys want to cover quickly before we jump into some of the questions?
Yeah, I would add that for demonstration purposes, I was sharing my screen and cutting and pasting, going back and forth, just so everybody sees mechanically how this is done. We kind of strongly recommend that for attorneys who are taking remote depositions, that they have a paralegal or assistant join the deposition as well. Just like your paralegal or assistant could sit in the physical conference room if you're taking a deposition in the conference room, they can participate in this remote deposition as well. And that person could be the one that drives the exhibits and is the one that's responsible for cutting and pasting the exhibits into the chat thread so that the attorney doesn't have to do it themselves, at least until you get comfortable enough where you have no problem going back and forth between the email that we get from Steno with the hyperlinks and the chat thread.
Cool. There's a couple of questions that have come in around exhibits, and maybe we'll just cover those as a starting point. The first one was, how can a deponent mark an exhibit, circling items, drawing something, etc. That is possible using Zoom, and there's a feature that they have in here called Annotate. Dylan, if you can actually share the exhibit of the car again, just as an example on your screen. And you guys won't be able to see this as panelists right now, excuse me, as attendees, but we will just demonstrate the functionality that it is in fact possible. So Dylan's got the car on his screen here. Maggie, as the witness, maybe you can mark on where you see the tire. If you go to your screen and click on Annotate there, there's an option to annotate. And if you could just draw on the tire yourself. You see that functionality there, Maggie, or would you like me to walk you through it?
Yeah, you need me to walk. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I'm going to do it on my screen here. This is me, Greg, drawing on Dylan's exhibit. You guys should be able to see that. I drew a big green circle on the rim of the back left tire. Dylan at that point has the ability to, again, all this is being recorded. So this would be, as part of the recording, would be something that you could then take afterwards and leverage if you needed to. The functionality is, I don't want to say more advanced, it's a different feature setting here. And if it's something that you are planning on doing during one of your depositions, just give us at Steno a heads up ahead of time, and we can walk through the deponent as well as you as a taking attorney in that 30-minute session prior to starting the deposition, just to make sure that everyone understands and knows how to use that annotate feature. And again, all that stuff gets videoed, so we can definitely do that. How does the reporter, another question here from from Paul, which was, how does the reporter handle the exhibits at the end of the deposition so as to attach to the exhibit? And along the same lines from Seth, does the chat thread become part of the transcript as an exhibit or otherwise? Dylan, can you answer this question in relation to kind of what Normandy and the dialogue that you guys had briefly yesterday?
Yeah, we think it's a best practice to attach the chat transcript as an exhibit, because that way there is no ambiguity as to what file was shown to the witness. And then what will happen afterwards is the court reporter has access to each of these exhibits. The court reporter will download them on his or her end and then attach them to the transcript, just like he or she would any other deposition transcript.
Yeah, and on our side, we will persist those hyperlinks well into the future, so that way people can always refer back to those hyperlinks and do what they need to do to be able to access them and again, share them outbound as part of the proceedings. There was another question that we had gotten earlier relating to video, and I think it was a question from Ivan. He said, Greg, what about videographers? Can they all be remote? So again, as a matter of practice, this video conference here is being recorded. I think the real question in some of this, and it's there's two elements here. There's what happens in the short term with coronavirus and people's anxieties about meeting other people in person. I think in the short term, you know, we may have a harder time finding videographers that are willing to travel to the deponent themselves to take separately an in-person video on a formal camera. Generally, when we've done remote depots, we do and will do and have seen requests for both, where we will do a remote depot as well as doing a video formal depot with the time codes on it and everything else that you would ordinarily see. So in effect, you get both as a taking attorney, both the formal video that you're used to as well as the Zoom video conference. Over the long term, if people want to take more remote depots where they don't have to travel, you guys should be able to very much see that this is possible now. And we can separately send a videographer on location to wherever the witness is, and as a net result, give you both outputs, both the Zoom and the live video. But in this case, in the short term, with everything that's going on with coronavirus and people's unwillingness to potentially meet in person, this video may suffice, depending on if it's something that you want to use. And Dylan, I know you had some thoughts on that yesterday as we were discussing that.
Yeah, so the real question is, can you use this video in trial? And the answer is there is no precedent yet for using a Zoom video in trial, whether you can or cannot use it. My position would be that this is a sworn deposition testimony, just like anything else. And if the witness makes a good admission on this video depo, then I want to use that at trial. Of course, I'd rather use this video than no video. So I would, you know, argue to the court that there's no reason that this should not be admissible. And you know, I think a court would have a hard time saying that this is not admissible, because I don't think anyone could really challenge the authenticity or, you know, I guess authenticity of this video itself.
So Ivan, you had asked a follow-up question here, which is, can we record the Zoom video? We record all of these videos by default. That they all get recorded and put into the cloud, and we share that video outbound with you guys as taking attorneys following the deposition itself. So that happens by default, and that's a default setting for all of our Steno employee Zoom accounts when they set up these meetings on your behalf. So I guess as it relates to your question of what if the deponent isn't comfortable with having a videographer present, I mean, functionally, I guess we could. I don't think it's probably in anyone's best interest to have us not be recording these Zoom videos. Just because of the newness of it, I think it's going to keep everyone honest and so forth. So if they're not comfortable, I don't know if I have a real clear answer for you at this point. But I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts off the top of your head, Dylan.
No, I mean, this is the way it's going to have to be done. I mean, so long as a witness, I mean, so long as a deposition is going to be taken remotely, everybody's going to need to be comfortable, you know, with the video camera. I suppose people could call in and have their deposition taken up the phone, but that would prevent everybody from sharing exhibits. So I wouldn't suggest that that's the best way to go.
There was a follow-up question here from Raul. He said, I may have missed this, but how do you share your screen? I'm going to share my screen here and actually show you the screenshots of what I was showing you guys earlier. If I'm on the desktop version here, there's a big giant green button at the center of my thing that says share. If I were to click on that, and Zoom is a little bit weird that when you share your Zoom, it won't actually share the UI of the user interface of Zoom when I'm sharing my screen. So I can't show you other than with screenshots right now. But I would click on share here, and then it would ask me what part of my screen I want to share. Do I want to share my whole desktop or a specific document? I hit that, and that immediately gets pushed out to everyone that's on the call. Again, Raul, if you'd like, and really this goes for anyone that's on the call, if you guys would like to experience this firsthand, to do a dry run or otherwise, even before you schedule a depo, we would gladly offer that to anyone following this call. And functionally, even following this call, we can send out a note to people as a follow-up to have them reach back out to us and schedule a time to do a mock version themselves, so they, again, can get a chance to push the buttons and get comfortable with this so they can see just how easy it really is. Paul Center asked if a document needs to be referred to that was not pre-submitted, can that be done? Yes, it can. I think what's important is that ideally that document be digital in some form. Again, with everyone being remote, it's really hard to distribute a paper document at the last second. So it's really just a question of getting it in electronic format. Once that happens, if part of the reason why we use Box and not just have people share documents directly into the chat thread via Zoom, which is possible, is that we want to keep them secure in a cloud-based storage location. And separately, large files sometimes have a hard time being transmitted over the Zoom video conference. So if it's mid-deposition and you guys get a large file, just send it over to us, concierge@steno.com. We'll upload it to that same shared Box account. We'll create a hyperlink for you guys within a few minutes. We'll get that back out to you guys, and everyone can share it in just the same fashion they just saw here. Again, we highly recommend that, so that way the formatting of all the exhibits is consistent. They all get stored in a shared secure folder. And again, we can be a resource for you guys to help with that. Separately, to Dylan's point, he mentioned this earlier, we can share that functionality, that shared folder with your paralegal if they're on the call, and they should be able to add exhibits to that box.com folder in real time and copy a hyperlink. It's a fairly easy process, and if you'd like, we can also educate people on that as well if they're worried that that may become an issue. There's two other questions here. Are the videos timed so as to relate to the transcript? I need to circle back to you on that, Paul. I do believe that there is a time coding function that we can enable on Zoom. We haven't played around with that enough yet. And I apologize for not having the answer off the top of my head, but I promise I will circle back.
Greg, I know that you can. I looked at it. You can turn on timestamps for the video.
Okay, perfect. So you can turn on timestamps. I don't know visually how that pushes back out to people, but we will likely, now that I'm hearing this, turn these on by default for all of these video calls as well. And I've been asked another question here. Can we sync the transcripts with the Zoom video? I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to. I know that the sync functionality that we have the transcript from the reporter, and we have the audio coming across. And that's really all that the sync functionality does, is it marries the audio to the transcript. I don't see any problem with doing that. Cool. Dylan, if you want to put everyone on audio, if anyone else has questions or follow-ups or otherwise, we're happy to answer them. I'd love to help you guys out in any way that we can here. We very much want to see this go not only for us, but for the community as a broader whole. I will reiterate it here. It's important that this information gets out to everyone in the community, because if everyone's thinking that remote depots can't be done, then no one's going to do them. But our priority here is making sure that attorneys and court reporters alike have all the information they need, can do as many remote depots as possible or mock depots to get comfortable with the technology. Again, it is fairly easy to use. It should feel just like real life. Excuse me, I keep saying real life because coronavirus isn't real life. It should just feel just like everyone's in person. We're aiming for that, and hopefully in seeing this today, you guys were able to see that and experience it. One other question that I do want to ask everyone before they hop off the call, if you guys could just reply with a yes in this thread here. We've been debating doing a number of these webinars to get more information out there. I imagine for those of you guys that joined the call today, you may have colleagues or otherwise that would also be interested in learning more about this. If you can just say yes in the chat thread if you feel like that is worthwhile, we will definitely make sure to do follow-ups of these to more colleagues and do these every other day for as long as this takes to get everyone up to speed. Paul, you asked a question here. If done on an iPhone or other phone, can it be turned to landscape mode? Yes, it can be turned to landscape mode. That's part of the reason why we share this over the chat thread. So that way everyone can open those exhibits on their own device and whatever user interface is native to that device. And that is hyper important, because if I'm just using the default screen share from my computer, like Dylan was earlier, without sharing it in the chat thread, when people see the exhibits, you get this weird construct where somebody on their laptop is viewing it in landscape mode, and then somebody that's on their phone is like trying to do these ones to turn it to get it right. They're doing this whole pinch and zoom thing. It's a bit of a nightmare, and we're trying to avoid that for people that may be experiencing a Zoom video conference for the first time. All of you guys we can do advanced training with, but what we're trying to optimize for are people that are less tech savvy or maybe didn't have advanced training on this. Again, we have a ton of experience from our startup background and doing other internet startups. Zoom is by and far the best technology that's out there. We've seen other providers that are not using Zoom, and they are I don't recommend it. Zoom by far has the best audio quality. They have the best video quality. They're the ones that are doing this. This is their full-time job. They're by far the market leaders in the space, and really it enables everything to run just as smoothly as if you were in person. Dylan, if you want to answer that question from Rita. Rita asked also, is this compatible with federal court rules? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, sorry. I was just looking at that because I saw that question come in. It's a very good question. I'm looking at FRCP 30 as we talk right now. I could share that with everybody. FRCP 30, which obviously deals with depositions, has a section for method of recording. And it says, the party who notices a deposition must state in the notice the method for recording the testimony. Unless the court orders otherwise, testimony may be recorded by audio, visual, or stenographic means. The noticing party bears the recording costs. So this is recording by audio visual means. So I think that this is provided for under the federal rules.
Perfect. Thank you, Dylan. If you could stop screen sharing, and actually as a follow-up to all of you guys, we'll actually send an email out with both of the sections that Dylan mentioned. They're also listed in our FAQ. Ivan, you asked a follow-up question here. Greg, was this video recorded? It was. It is currently recording. We have a couple of colleagues who want to view this video later today. As a follow-up to this, we will share. I got to figure out how we're going to share it. We may host it on our site or publish it to YouTube. Let me think on that some, but we will do our best to get that out today. Again, I know this is information that everyone wants to get their hands on, and we want it out there in the world. The more people that know about this and know how this is done, the better off we're all going to be. We'll do follow-up webinars, and we'll do everything in our power to help you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you all. We'll talk to you soon. See you guys.